They called it innovation. He called it opportunity. People don't buy token, they buy belief.
In just 90 days, a worthless token became a $3 billion empire.
This is the future, we're early!
And then it vanished.
Why can't I withdraw?
The token was fake, but the money was real.
The first warning sign came at exactly 3:17 a.m. when a single anonymous wallet received $30 million worth of a token that technically did not exist yet, and no one noticed because by the time the sun rose, the man behind it had already convinced the world it was the future of finance. And his name was Elias Vorn, a quiet former software contractor who once slept in his car behind abandoned office buildings, watching others succeed while his own startup collapsed in silence. And years later, he would stand at the center of a $3 billion crypto empire built on nothing but code, confidence, and a lie so perfectly engineered that even seasoned blockchain analysts believed it. Because Elias had learned a brutal lesson early on while watching louder, less talented founders raise millions on nothing but promises. In crypto, belief mattered more than truth, so he designed RMX, a token with a sleek name, a professional website, and a white paper filled with elegant equations, complex tokenomics, and bold promises of decentralized wealth redistribution. Except buried deep inside the smart contract was a fatal secret no one bothered to read closely enough to find, a hidden mint function controlled by a single wallet, his wallet, meaning RMX could be created from nothing at any moment. But when the token launched, it exploded faster than anyone expected. Influencers praised it as revolutionary, Telegram groups multiplied overnight, early investors doubled and tripled their money within days, unaware that every payout came from new buyers entering the system. Because Elias didn't just understand blockchain, he understood human psychology. He staged fake audits using shell companies, hired actors to pose as developers on live streams, and released carefully timed partnership announcements with companies that didn't actually exist. And when skeptics asked uncomfortable questions, the price surged just enough to silence them, because nothing kills doubt faster than profit. Within 6 months, RMX crossed a $10 billion market cap on paper. Headlines called Elias a visionary, and conferences invited him as a keynote speaker. But what no one ever saw was Elias sitting alone in a dark apartment at night, refreshing blockchain explorers, watching billions move exactly where he wanted, pulling liquidity in tiny invisible increments, never enough to crash the price, never enough to trigger alarms. While on stage, he talked about transparency and decentralization, fully aware that the entire economy depended on his silence. And the irony was ruthless, because the more people believed in RMX, the more real it became. Banks began circling. Venture capital funds wanted exposure. Regulators hesitated because technically nothing illegal had happened yet, just something deeply wrong. And then came the moment that changed everything. A cold email from a private equity firm offering to buy a controlling stake in RMX at a $3 billion valuation, real money for a fake token. And Elias reread the message over and over, realizing the lie had grown larger than him. Because accepting meant deep scrutiny, declining meant suspicion, and for the first time since launch, control felt fragile. Because while investors celebrated on social media, the blockchain was telling a different story. One anonymous analyst had noticed a strange pattern: mint events routed through layered wallets, always ending in the same address. And while YouTube videos praised Elias as a genius, someone somewhere was quietly mapping his entire empire transaction by transaction. Elias delayed the deal, announced a major protocol upgrade, promised a massive token burn that never actually happened, and once again the price soared. Investors cheered, unaware they were celebrating their own trap. Because what they didn't know was that Elias had already begun preparing his exit, converting minted tokens into stablecoins through obscure bridges, spreading funds across multiple jurisdictions, rehearsing his disappearance while posting inspirational quotes online about patience and long-term vision. And the final irony came on the night RMX was listed on a top-tier exchange. Fireworks lit up the skyline in Dubai, champagne flowed in Singapore, millions watched the chart climb higher than ever before, as Elias sat alone in silence, staring at a single red notification blinking on his screen. A message from an unknown sender containing just one sentence: "We know what you did, and so will everyone else." And in that moment, the empire was still standing, the price was still rising, the world was still cheering. But somewhere, the countdown had already begun. Because the greatest scams don't end when the money is made, they end when the truth decides to surface. And as Elias closed his laptop, boarded a flight booked under a different name, and vanished into the dark, one question remained unanswered. Was this the beginning of his escape, or the first step toward a collapse that would erase everything? In the next episode.
3 days after RMX reached a $3 billion valuation, something subtle changed on the blockchain. Nothing visible to the public. No red candles, no panic, no headlines. Just a quiet anomaly. A single wallet that had been dormant for months suddenly woke up. It didn't sell, it didn't buy. It only moved small, precise test transactions, the kind that don't make money but confirm access. The kind Elias Vorn instantly recognized as dangerous because he had done the same thing himself hundreds of times before. The markets were still euphoric. Exchanges were announcing new trading pairs. Influencers were calling RMX the future of decentralized finance. And Elias was being invited to private dinners with venture capitalists who wanted his next idea. But that night, alone in his apartment, surrounded by glowing screens, he didn't feel powerful. He felt hunted. He refreshed the blockchain explorer again and again, watching the same wallet branch into others like veins spreading under skin. Whoever was behind it knew what they were doing, and worse, they knew how to stay invisible by mimicking an innocent wallet. By morning, rumors began to circulate, quietly at first, buried deep in Telegram threads, screenshots without context, arrows drawn between wallets, numbers highlighted in red. Someone was suggesting that RMX's supply wasn't fixed, that the smart contract allowed minting beyond what the white paper promised. The claim was technical, boring to most investors, and easy to dismiss, but it didn't need to convince everyone. It only needed to convince a few people with influence. Within hours, a mid-sized crypto analyst tweeted a single sentence: "Something feels off about RMX. Check the contract yourself." Elias saw it while boarding a private elevator in a Dubai hotel, and for the first time since the token launched, his hands shook. The team moved fast. Fake audit updates were pushed, emergency AMAs scheduled. The spokesperson went live, smiling, calm, reassuring, saying everything was FUD, misinformation, jealousy from competitors. And the market believed it, because markets don't run on truth, they run on momentum. RMX dipped 4%, then recovered, and for a moment Elias thought he had survived. Again. But the analyst didn't stop. He released a thread showing time-stamped contract deployments, a comparison between public code and on-chain behavior, and a final line that froze everything. This token can be inflated at will. The response was immediate.
Whales began to pull liquidity, not all at once, just enough to test the exit. Slippage widened, prices started to slip, exchanges froze deposits for maintenance, influencers deleted old tweets, regulators quietly reached out to exchanges asking questions. Elias initiated Phase 3, the exit. Mixers activated, stablecoins routed, bridges crossed, funds fragmented across jurisdictions. He watched hundreds of millions move in silence while the public still debated whether there was even a problem. Then came the halt. One exchange announced temporary suspension of RMX trading, citing irregularities. Another followed, then another. Charts froze, prices disappeared, panic replaced denial. Telegram chats that once moved too fast to be read were now filled with the same question over and over: can I withdraw? Elias turned off his phone and focused on the last transfer. When the final transaction confirmed, he leaned back, exhaled, and for the first time smiled. Not because he had won, but because it was finally over. Hours later, RMX officially collapsed. Liquidity drained to zero. The price dropped 99% in minutes. Billions vanished. Retirement funds gone. Savings erased. People refreshed their apps, staring at numbers that no longer made sense. Some screamed, some cried, some stayed silent. Exchanges blamed the project blamed hackers. Hackers never existed. Investigators traced the wallets as far as they could before they vanished into privacy chains and foreign jurisdictions. Elias Vorn did not issue a statement. He did not apologize. He did not disappear dramatically. He simply stopped existing online. No posts, no messages, no sightings. The analyst published one final update saying the funds were unrecoverable. The trail ended clean, too clean. Months passed, lawsuits piled up, hearings were scheduled, names were mentioned, but never his. A shell company in one country owned another in a different one, each legally separated, each compliant. No extradition, no clear crime, just a system used exactly as designed. And then, 1 year later, a new token quietly appeared. No hype, no influencers, no promises, just a clean website, a different team, a different vision, and deep in the contract, hidden in plain sight, a familiar function, waiting, dormant, patient, watching. Because in this world, the lesson is never that scams fail. The lesson is that the best ones end before anyone realizes they were ever scams at all. And somewhere, right now, someone is reading a white paper, believing a story, trusting a face, and funding the next collapse. And the only question left is not whether it will happen again, but whether next time the name will finally be known. Six weeks after the collapse of RMX, the name Elias Vorn still didn't exist officially. Not in passports, not in corporate registries, not in any immigration database. And that absence became the most disturbing detail of the entire case, because investigators weren't looking for a man anymore. They were looking for a ghost. The first breakthrough came from something insignificant, a forgotten KYC document submitted years earlier to a now defunct exchange. It listed a different name, a different nationality, and a grainy webcam photo that didn't quite match the face the public knew. Analysts cross-referenced it with old domain registrations, IP logs, and archived GitHub commits, slowly assembling a timeline that didn't point to one country, but many. Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, always temporary, always transitional. Whoever Elias Vorn was, he never stayed long enough to be known. Law enforcement agencies opened parallel investigations, quietly at first, because public announcements would only cause panic and lawsuits. Subpoenas were issued to exchanges, cloud providers, and payment processors, but every trail ended the same. Shell companies owned by trusts, registered in jurisdictions designed to forget records after a few years, legally compliant, perfectly clean, and useless. The analyst who first exposed Orem X continued digging, obsessively mapping wallet behavior, not just where the money went, but how it moved. He noticed patterns, habits, preferences. Elias favored certain bridges, avoided others, never moved funds during specific hours, suggesting time zones and sleep cycles. A profile began to emerge, not a criminal mastermind, but a disciplined system thinker. Someone who treated fraud like engineering. Then something unexpected happened, a mistake, not financial, but human. One of the wallets interacted briefly with a decentralized application that logged browser metadata, only milliseconds of exposure, but it was enough to reveal a language setting, not English, not Russian, but Romanian. The discovery narrowed the search dramatically. Journalists dug through old startup pitch events, hackathons, failed ICOs, and obscure conference videos until they found him. Not Elias Vorn, but a different name, speaking on a panel years earlier about decentralization and freedom from state control. His face was younger, thinner, but unmistakable. He had once been a believer, not in scams, but in the idea that systems were broken and deserved to be exploited. He had watched banks collapse, governments bail themselves out, and ordinary people lose everything. And somewhere along the way, he decided that if the game was rigged, the smartest move was to rig it better than everyone else. Authorities prepared an arrest warrant, but there was a problem. No country could agree where to issue it from, because no country could prove he had committed a crime on their soil. The Orem X smart contract worked exactly as written. Disclosures existed, buried deep. Legal disclaimers were airtight. Technically, investors had agreed to everything they lost. Lawsuits failed one by one, not because judges believed Elias was innocent, but because innocence was never required, only compliance. Behind the scenes, whispers circulated that Elias had been spotted in Singapore, then Istanbul, then Sao Paulo, always unconfirmed, always gone by the time anyone checked. But then came the final twist. 2 years after Orem X, a new DeFi protocol surged unexpectedly. Different branding, different narrative, but familiar architecture. Analysts noticed similarities, not copied code, but philosophy. The same modular liquidity design, the same slow trust building, the same invisible back door, structured so subtly it looked like a feature, not a flaw. This time, the founder appeared publicly. Interviews, podcasts, conference talks, always smiling, always transparent, always critical of scams and fraud. And for a brief moment, people wondered whether Elias Vorn had returned, not as a villain, but as a warning. Until one night, a message appeared in the analyst's inbox from an anonymous account. Just 6 words, "You were right the first time." And attached was a wallet address holding a fraction of a percent of Orem X, funds untouched, unmoved, like a signature, like proof that Elias Vorn was never running from the system. He was testing it, watching it, learning, and preparing. Because the manhunt was never about finding him, it was about understanding that in a world built on code, anonymity, and belief, the most dangerous criminals don't hide from the spotlight, they redesign it. And the final question isn't where Elias Vorn is. The final question is how many times he has already been trusted again.